Ryan Murphy is a lifelong resident of Brisbane, Australia, and he was the youngest councillor ever elected to the City Council back in 2012. And now he's the chair of the Brisbane City Council Transport Committee, which plans for integrated public and active transport services across Brisbane. And I'm excited that he's a guest on our Transit Unplugged podcast today. I'm Paul Comfort, and I recently went to Australia for a 10-day visit and recorded a number of podcasts and a couple of our TV shows. And this is the last of 4 podcasts that came out of that. Ryan and I met at the docks where the ferry system takes off. They've got an amazing ferry system. We recorded this podcast while on board several ferries and on the docks there at Brisbane. And he talks about the CityCat system and how they're growing ferry systems to become not just a way to get from A to B, but actually be a destination on their own. He also talks about their Cross River Rail project going underneath the river that we visited, and you can see on this month's episode of Transit Unplugged TV. And he talks about the new Brisbane BRT system, Metro, which is these amazing buses that look like you're on a rail system. We also showcase them on this month's episode too on YouTube. So we have a television show, Transit Unplugged TV, that kind of goes along with this podcast. So the things he's talking about, you can see if you go over to our YouTube channel, Transit Unplugged TV. This, though, is an amazing podcast interview with a bright leader for not only Australia, but I would suggest for the world, a global transport leader. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation and feel his passion for public transportation like mine, a fellow transit evangelist. All on this episode of Transit Unplugged. Excited to be in Brisbane on the big river here with the chair of the City Council's Transportation Committee, Ryan Murphy. Ryan, thanks so much for hosting us today.
Yeah, good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show.
Tell us about where we're at right now. We're riding inside one of your awesome, tell us.
We're sitting on a CityCat, which is a catamaran. It carries about 170 people, and they go up and down the Brisbane River to 22 stations and stops throughout our river. And we carry about 5 million passengers a year on this system. And in Brisbane, for a long time, I think it's been number 3 on TripAdvisor in terms of the things that people do when they come to the city.
Really?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of cities, their public transport doesn't really feature as an attraction in its own right, but I think people really love the CityCats, and Brisbane residents love them too.
Yeah, I was just in Halifax and went on their ferries, and then also my buddy Kevin Quinn runs TransLink in Vancouver, Canada, and they've got them too, and the same kind of thing. People just ride them just to ride them, but this is a fantastic service. You offer how many vehicles and all that kind of stuff, and then fit it into the context of your overall network.
Yeah, we've got about 20 CityCats. We've got 5 kitty cats too. They're little Cross River versions.
Oh, okay. CityCats and kitty cats.
Yeah, that's right.
Great, man.
A little bit of a Brisbane sense of humour. We try to put in everything. But it provides effectively a 15 to 30 minute service, 15 minutes during the peak, 30 minutes off peak, up and down the river. The peak lasts throughout the day though, so there's that constant supply of people, and we know our busiest days on Saturday when Brisbane residents like to get out and they don't need to be at work on time, so they could take a little bit longer to get where they want to go. And we know that the mix of tourists and leisure users and commuters is about 50-50 on this service. Okay. So it does perform an important commuter function, but as I said, it's part of the tourism offering in our city, and you can go anywhere all the way upriver. It's about a 90-minute journey from the start of the mouth of the river all the way up to the last stop. So
what river is this?
It's the Brisbane River.
That's what I thought. Yeah, Brisbane River. Yeah.
I don't mention the name because it's the name of the city, but we're on the Brisbane River.
You know, this is unique. People in America, I don't think, realize this is really a river city. It runs its way through the city, and the whole city's built around it.
Yeah, the whole city's built around the river, and so bridges are really important in Brisbane for getting around, and they're big bottlenecks in our transport system. So the river is a great way to avoid those windy roads that snake through Brisbane, and just get out there and see. And it used to be a port city. There was a lot of maritime agricultural traffic that would come up here and load hay and copper and minerals. And then as that's all moved to dedicated port facilities at the mouth of the river, Brisbane residents all of a sudden felt comfortable to live on the river in the 50s and 60s. And it was about 1996 that the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, then Jim Sawley, decided to start the CityCat system, a limited number of terminals, limited number of services. And we're now in our 4th generation of vessels. We've got double-decker. They keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more accessible. So we've got quite a big fleet now, and operated by River City Ferries, which is Sealink. And so they're a listed company in Australia, run maritime services all around the country for us.
I was just with Howard Collins, my friend down from Sydney, We were on Tasmania.
Oh, yeah.
And he was there inspecting 7 new ferries that they're getting built in Tasmania that they'll bring back to Sydney and run on their ferry service. So a lot of water, obviously, around the island and a lot of great ferry services. Tell us about, Ryan, the overall transportation network in Brisbane. Walk us through some of what you got here.
Brisbane's a city really built on the back of the bus. It's a city that the City Council runs its own transport company. Next year, 2025, will be our 100th year in operation, and we own and operate the vast majority of the city's public transport fleet, whether that's buses or CityCats. A lot of other cities like Sydney and Melbourne, very much cities built on the back of rail, and rail does the heavy lifting. But in Brisbane, we've got 27 kilometres of busways, and buses do the heavy lifting.
Dedicated busways.
Yeah, dedicated busways.
I saw them today.
Yeah.
Some are even grade separated and everything, it looks like. It's great.
Yeah, really high quality infrastructure, and it means we're a lot more similar to a city like, Curitiba or Rio. So a lot of Australians don't really understand that there are bus rapid transit cities out there because they don't visit the places where they are, but they are there. You just have to look hard enough to find them.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of buses that you run yourself. Yep. And then what else?
So the bus network's about 80 million a year. We have a city rail network, which is quite expensive, but only about a third of the patronage of the bus network. And historically, the council and the state government built these networks in parallel to each other. So there's not been that really great multimodal opportunity that you get in some cities between bus and rail. We're in the process of fixing that now. We signed a landmark agreement with the state government earlier this year to fix our bus to rail connections and really integrate all the modes ahead of the Olympics in 2032. So there's some big reforms happening in the city over the next few years.
Well, Councilman, we jumped off one ferry and we got on a new one. Tell me about this new one.
This is the next generation 4 CityCats. So I think there's about 6 or 7 of these in service at the moment. They are our latest offering. They feature these wide panoramic windows, space for people in wheelchairs. Previously couldn't see out the windows because the windows were too high, but now they've got the best seat in the house right here. You've got USB charging throughout, better, more comfortable seating and wider spaces. We even put a bar in this one as well, so we hire them out for functions and parties occasionally. And it's got a double deck as well, so you can go up on the top and there's a sun shade, because we are unfortunately get quite a lot of UV light up here in Queensland. So you can sit up there on the top deck and watch the river go by, have the wind in your hair. It's a really great way to spend a weekend.
We'll get right back to my interview with Ryan Murphy, but first I have a favor to ask of you. Please take a moment to participate in our listener survey. It'll only take a few minutes of your time, and your input is invaluable to me for planning future episodes. And I want to get your feedback on the show. So just go to transitunplugged.com/survey to fill it out online. The link will also be in this podcast show notes. Thank you for your help. I really appreciate it. All right, let's jump back into the conversation on buses. You were telling me about that the bus network is the backbone of what you've got going on here. But today I visited one of your amazing operations, which you piloted, I think, for a month, and soon when you get the whole fleet in, you'll jump back in. It's a BRT-like service, but it's a metro. And I'm telling you, Ryan, the vehicles are some of the coolest things I've seen.
Yeah, it's a really cool vehicle, and what it is part of Brisbane Metro, which is a bus rapid transit project to replace several of our congested lines, the 111, the 66, with a large double articulated electric bus. So this is the Hesse Light Tram 25. It's in service in a number of cities in France and Switzerland, but we've taken that bus that was existing, we've brought it into Australian design rules, we've up-revved it, we put 6 residential homes worth of air conditioners on the top because they don't need them a lot in France and Switzerland. And we brought it here to enable it to improve the capacity of our busway system. And what we do is we basically, the concept is we take the existing bus routes that have buses that can carry about 76 people on them. We replace them with a bus that can carry 170 people. And then we also truncate large parts of our network where the bus would previously run half or a quarter full all the way into the CBD. We then truncate that at busway stations to bring that resource back into the network in the outer. So it's about Brisbane doing what other bigger cities have done, getting used to the two-seat journeys. That's what Brisbane Metro is about in our city. And we also deal with a big problem that we have in the core of our city, which is bus congestion. And we take about a third of those buses clogging up the CBD and redirect them into the suburbs. So it solves a number of
interesting
busway problems that we have.
So here this is...
I saw that today, actually. I saw bus after bus after bus. This morning, I was at Anzac Square, and I was having coffee, and when I used to run Baltimore, I saw the same problem. I'd have, 11 buses go by in 1 minute, and it was congested. And so that I get what you're doing. You're going, this is the feeder into the main network.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of cities think it's a bit of a choice between what type of light rail are they going to have.
Yeah.
In Brisbane, we did look at converting the busway to light rail, but we have such a big outer catchment that we would have to all terminate. I wouldn't be able to use the busway at all, so there'd be so many thousands of introduced transfers. This product sort of sits between buses at the high level and then trams at the low level. It's a tram or a light rail-like capacity improvement, but without anywhere near the cost. So if you think about something like your iPhone has wireless charging, well, this is like a tram without the wires. So we're effectively going back to the tram system that Brisbane had back in the 40s, and we're starting again with the latest and greatest wireless technology. So these vehicles all use flash charging from pantographs, and we charge them at the end of every trip. So they'll finish their route, Metro 1 or 2, they'll flash charge for just 6 minutes, battery's fully topped up, and then off they'll go on the next route.
And you hope to open this service in your 100th anniversary year of 2025, is that right?
Yeah, we do. It's exciting. We've had a lot of interest from all around the world about what we're doing here to really take that bus rapid transit product forwards, and a lot of cities, in particularly, Vancouver's been reaching out to us, Auckland, big cities with busways, but they want to know how to get the next level of performance out of their busway. Yeah. And we think this product it sits at a great point in between that full conversion to light rail and just running buses at a rapid frequency, because you get both capacity and you get a really high quality passenger offering, and people are seeking that out more and more in public transport. It's not just about where it goes, it's about whether you get there in style and comfort, and whether there's those amenities for you.
It feels and looks like you're on a brand new light rail vehicle on the inside. It's got that vibe. So speaking of rail, let's talk about rail. Brisbane is the capital of Queensland, right?
That's right.
Yes,
yeah.
And so the state's heavily involved in the rail service here, is that right?
Yeah, the state government runs the rail network, the Queensland Rail, City Rail, it goes by those sort of names. It's actually a reasonably good network across Brisbane, has great coverage around the historical rail lines. The issue has always been the cost to serve, and the patronage has never been particularly impressive to warrant further investment. City's going through a very significant investment in rail at the moment with Cross River Rail, which is a second crossing of the Brisbane River of the rail network. So it links the Gold Coast line, Beenleigh line with a new line that runs under the river and creates some new underground stations in the heart of Brisbane City. It's wrapping up at the moment. I don't think it'll commission probably until 2026, but that'll add a lot more capacity into the railway network as well, so we can ramp up that frequency and capacity ahead of the Olympics in 2032.
Yeah, let's talk a little about that. Tell us about the plans the city has and a little bit about the Olympics coming. So we just did a show in LA. Of course, they're the next one, and then you're the one right after that.
Yeah, Paris, LA, and then Brisbane.
There you go. How about that?
City no one's ever heard of.
They will after this.
Well, we are so humble and so honoured to be standing, with Paris and LA in those Olympic cities, and we understand the task in front of us to retrofit the small city's public transport system to a system that has to host summer games. I mean, that is a momentous undertaking.
Yes.
And it really fills me with both hope of what we can change and what we can do in the next few years, and also dread of what if we get it wrong. Put in place a range of initiatives. The Lord Mayor a few months ago released a document called The Race to Goal. And it's all about these transformative improvements we can make to our city's public transport network in the 8-year run up to the games, and we're very much looking to bus rapid transit as one of those things that we know we can do that in 8 years. If we want to launch a light rail project in Australia today, it's 8 years just to get the permitting done, basically.
Yeah,
so it's similar in America.
Of course. I'm very familiar.
But bus rapid transit can give us some of those lighter touch solutions, things like transit ways and bus priority. With these metro vehicles that we've got now, and we can deliver these step change improvements in capacity to parts of the city where we know we actually need to increase the amount of seats we have on public transport by 50% to meet the game's demand. So if you go to any city in the world and say, I need you to increase the public transport system by 50%, most planners would tell you you're crazy.
Right.
It's going to enable some really bold decision making. We need to make decisions that might have been very difficult with the politics of today. There's an Olympics urgency, and Brisbane residents really don't want to see the city let itself down on the world stage. So we're going to use that, we're going to harness that over the next few years.
Tell me some about your background and history and how you got so interested and involved in transportation and in government.
I've been in this role for coming up on 5 years, and prior to this I was in public relations for major infrastructure and resource projects in Queensland, things that people generally don't like in their backyard, like copper mines and dams and pipelines and things like that. So I guess I got used to having difficult conversations about things that are necessary for the economy but that people might not necessarily like in their backyard. Now I get to do something that is so exciting because serving as a city councillor, I've been a councillor for 12 years now.
Oh, wow.
I love serving my community, but the transport role gives me the opportunity to help our city kind of grow up and fix the problems that I experienced as a user, as a consumer of our city's transport. I don't like that. Why can't I see a screen on this CityCat at the moment telling me, what my next destination is and how long it's going to take me to get there? These are the customer-facing elements that so many transport systems are getting right around the world, and I want to bring that here so that we can also get that right. And we've got so many great companies that are looking to make Brisbane home, looking to set up a presence in the city since we were awarded the games, that I actually think this is not going to be as hard as it looks. It just takes will.
That's wonderful. Let's talk about the nation of Australia. Where does public transportation sit in the list of priorities for this country, and where do you think it's going?
I don't think transport has been a particular priority for Australian politicians until recently. I think successes like the Sydney Metro really, shown politicians of both sides in Australia the potential for these game-changing projects to actually make a lasting difference and show a lasting legacy. The amount of money that we spend in this country, particularly on highway and road transport, is astronomical compared to what we would spend on urban public transport. And there are real benefits to our ESG and the sustainability of cities that you can drive when you get public transport systems functioning well. I always make the argument around the need for public transport, around the avoided cost of road widening and road infrastructure. You look at LA, they try to build their way out of traffic congestion by adding more lanes, and it's not worked. But you improve the public transport product, you can avoid billions in road work. So if you try and make that, financial argument, because Australians are very practical in that way, all of a sudden you start to see people go, oh, actually, maybe we should have an additional bus, or maybe the span of hours should be a little bit longer. But you have to reach that threshold of quality that people will use it. And I think we're very close.
That's great. Well, Ryan, we wish you the very best as you continue to help lead this city's transportation future.
No, thanks for doing what you're doing, Paul. It's very important and very much appreciated for all of us out there that are trying to make a difference in this field.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged with our special guest, Ryan Murphy. Hi, I'm Tris Hussey, editor of the podcast, and coming up next week on the show, we have Tom Drost, CEO of Ben Franklin Transit in Washington State. And as Paul mentioned in the episode, we'd really appreciate your help with our listener survey. Just go to transitunplugged.com/survey and just take a few minutes to fill it out. It'll really help us plan episodes and keep making Transit Unplugged better and better. You'll also find a link to the survey in the show notes. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people, and at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.